Hello, I am Aisha.
And Paula, your cultural hybrid mental health therapist.
Here to explore unfiltered and heartfelt conversations on core issues
that affect us as human beings. Get ready for honest, captivating,
and real stories that take you on a journey to navigate your life
in the best possible way.
So grab a seat
and stay with us on this episode of
Do We Have Your Attention? Hi, lovely listeners. My name is Aisha.
And I'm Paula Martins.
And we are your cultural hybrid mental health therapists. And this is the Do We Have Your Attention podcast. Today, we're diving into common controlling behaviors, how they show up in friendships, relationships, workplaces, and even within families.
Yep. And sometimes controlling behaviors can be very much so obvious. Yes. But then other times they can also be subtle, and it can start small and obviously gradually build over a period of time. So this is why this conversation is a very important conversation for us to be having. And I'm excited that we waited till season 2 to have this conversation as well.
Yes. And today, guys, we have an incredible guest joining us today. Someone who's also a mental health therapist. Please welcome Dustin to the Do We Have Your Attention podcast. Yay!
Hello. Thank you. So happy to be here.
Hi.
So Dustin, our listeners, as Aisha already mentioned, a mental health therapist. However, Dustin wears many, many different hats.
Okay,
now,
you better let them know.
We're going to give you the floor to introduce yourself and let our lovely listeners know who you are and what you are about.
Yes.
Ooh, that sounds spicy. Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Dustin Barnes. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist. I am the owner of Dustin Barnes Therapy, lead clinician. I also like to call it DB therapy for short. And I've been in the field for about 8 years now practicing.
Wow.
Yeah.
We're so excited to have you, Dustin.
Thank you. As far as like who I usually see, some of my clients include BIPOC, Black Indigenous people of color, LGBTQ plus, artists and musicians. I also am a singer.
Oh, well, I can relate to that. Actually,
you might hear.
You guys want to tell them that you guys have a song together?
Dustin and I go way back. You know how they say they knew me when I was in the struggle.
You might hear.
Well, now you guys are not struggling anymore. Thank God.
Now we've leveled up.
Yes, level up. Period.
It's a journey.
It is a journey.
Yeah. I also do really well with late teens and college age transition. Yes. Can I get amen? And then as far as what my clients experience, I would say like depression, anxiety, but it really runs the gamut. I do well with people who feel like they're kind of other, have been very othered in their life. People who just are feeling like they want to get to know themselves better and just like feel better about their life in general.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the way in which you just categorize that people who are othered, because it can mean many different things from an intersectionality point of view. Obviously, there are many different intersecting identities. And obviously, I know Dustin personally. He's a very good friend of mine. We've known each other for a very long time. We have been through the highs and the lows. And the in-betweens as well. So I think this is going to be obviously a very great conversation. And of course, before we dive in, we always start with our feelings check-in. So since you are our first guest, Dustin, looking at the feelings color, where would you say and how would you say you're feeling today?
Okay. Do you want me to be honest? Do you want me to tell like a canned response?
Yes.
This is an honest podcast, Dustin. We want to your true feelings.
Okay. I was just kidding. I was just kidding, guys. Okay. I'm feeling actually, I'm going to say orange. Confident.
Okay.
Innovative. Youth. Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Let's go.
I love it. Confident, innovative, youth. I love that. Paula, what about you? How are you feeling?
So today I am feeling a little bit of yellow and gray at the same time. So like a happy, positive, energetic optimistic, but
Yeah.
also like on edge. If you see, like, you know, when you're like anxiously waiting for something.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I'm feeling today. How about you? How are you feeling?
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'm feeling also yellow, like positive energy, even though our topic is really difficult to talk about, but also just green. I feel like I need to be calm to have this conversation. So,
Aw.
That's a good way to put that.
yes. And of course, to our listeners, you know we're not letting you off the hook. So please take a moment and check in with yourself, how you're feeling right now, and not just the automatic I'm fine, but really what's truly coming up for you in this moment.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into it. Controlling behaviors can creep into our lives in ways in which we don't necessarily recognize.
Yeah.
So my first question to you both, and I guess myself, is what actually does controlling behaviors, like what does it actually mean, controlling behavior? And how does it show up in relationships, workplaces, or even social dynamics?
Dustin, do you want to take this as our official guest?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
To start it off, great.
Okay, let's see. What does controlling behavior actually mean? You know, I was thinking about this. I think the first thing is that it starts with an unease in the self. For example, if I'm trying to control someone else or if I'm trying to control my environment, it's because I'm off center with myself.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think that's not usually the way that we think of control, but it really is a reflection of how the person is feeling inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you said
an
that.
Excellent point.
Yeah. And I think you do bring up a good point where you're basically saying it stems from insecurity or like the need for control, the need for certainty, which is something that we can't have all the time. But if we think about how it shows up in other relationships, so let's say romantic relationships, it might look like your partner trying to dictate who you talk to, what you wear, you trying to set a boundary and they're guilt tripping you. In your friendships, or I guess that could be the same thing for any type of relationship, right?
Yeah.
In your workplace, it could look like withholding information as a way of like having control and feeling very powerful, undermining other people and making them feel like their own thoughts and what they share in that space doesn't really count, or like what they're sharing isn't making sense and contributes significantly to the team. So But what do you think, Paula, since we've said our version?
I really like what you said, Dustin, because when we think about controlling behaviors, right, it's more externalized behavior. So we're looking at it more from what is happening externally. But it really starts with what's happening with us internally. And that unease with self that's being projected out on people, whether it's from a place of control. And obviously that can look like dictating something, micromanaging in a workplace. That can look like jealousy. That can look like isolating your partner or your friend. That can also look like gaslighting as well, manipulation. So to some degree, the external behavior is a controlling behavior. But oftentimes, from what at least you were sharing, Dustin, is that controlling behavior actually stems more so from our inner experiences of ourselves.
Yeah.
And
a lot of times, you know, people do that to reduce their own anxiety and their own insecurity.
Exactly.
Trying to dominate the other person or trying to take control of how other people are showing up in your life. They use that to minimize their own anxiety, which is obviously, it's hard to do that. It's very, very hard.
Yep. I have a question for you both. Show of hands if you are aware of your controlling behaviors. I know the listeners can't see us. Show of hands.
I know of some, but not obviously not all.
If you're aware of some of your controlling behaviors, you don't have to know everything, but you're aware that you do have them.
I do.
For sure.
And
I do.
you have an idea of what they might be like.
Yes, I do.
Look, Aisha is so nervous. She's like, I don't know if I need to tell people this.
Man,
no, I
that's a
will,
great
because
question.
we literally just had this conversation last weekend when we were in the car. And you guys were asking me about my routine. And I was telling you guys how rigid my routine is. And it shows up in every space I am. In my social life, at work, in my personal life. And I know deep down it's because that's my own form of control and just making myself less anxious about things.
Yeah.
But I also know how to manage it when obviously a lot of things go out of my control. In the past, I didn't know how to manage that. Like I would like really go crazy if something breaks out of my routine. But now I've learned to just welcome it and be like, you know what? this is okay. You don't have to control everything. This can change. But what about you, Dustin?
So you're
I'm
saying
curious to hear
you've
yours.
increased your flexibility?
Yes, I have.
Oh,
However, my
nice.
routine is still very rigid. Paula would I was breaking it down to them in the car and they're like, what? You know, you could rest now.
Do you remember what I said? I said, so I think this is something that we typically take to our therapist. Take to our therapy session.
And I was like, I know. I definitely know. But it's still something that I'm working on. If I'm being
it's
honest.
funny because when you asked me that question, Paul, the first thing that came to mind is I thought you were saying in regards to other people. But you're saying in general, kind of with my life.
Yeah.
Controlling behaviors. I do try to keep a schedule, but I really work on flexibility because that's like probably where the main source of my anxiety comes from. When I'm like too rigid, or when you expect something to go a certain way and then when it doesn't, you're like devastated.
Yeah.
So, yep. Real devastating. But honestly, you can still talk about it with other people because I know in my previous relationship, my ex used to tell me like, do you know that you would have conversations and then try to lead it to the outcome you wanted to get to? And I was like, at first I was like, what is he talking about? Not to say there were things that he was doing too that were not obviously great,
Right.
but it gave me a moment to reflect and be like, all right, I might be trying to control the situation in a way where, when you're trying to hold someone accountable and they're not trying to be accountable, so then you try to control the situation so that they become accountable. That's just what was happening.
You know why I'm laughing? I've been called out for the same thing. I've been called out for the same thing. Is this like a therapist thing or what?
Maybe it is. I'm like, you need to hold yourself accountable so then I will be trying to lead him there, but he will clock me.
Like guided discovery.
But,
Question.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so hard to not.
But
fall
he will
into
clock
that,
me
though.
so bad, and I'm like, you know what? It's okay to not force people to be accountable, and like then you get to make the decision of what that relationship dynamic wants to look like for you moving forward. But you can't really force people to be accountable. So yeah, Dustin, you can share about other people in your life, not necessarily yours.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know in the past, one thing that this is like 10, 15 years ago, but I'm not perfect. My friends used to like criticize me. One friend in particular that I was judgmental. And so some of the behaviors that they had, I like disapproved of. Like, for example, I thought they were like kind of unmotivated and like lazy. Sorry. And I would tell them. So I don't know, maybe like me criticizing them was a form of me trying to get them better. I know in my life today, one thing I work on a lot is accepting people for who they are instead of who I want them to be.
That's real.
And still being there to support them, but not expecting them to be a certain way.
Yeah.
Easy to say, hard
That's
to
real.
do.
I really love that example.
No, I think because I was trying to look for a reframe for that. I think that can be like criticizing as a form of controlling behaviors, right?
Yeah.
Where we oftentimes focus on other people, what they're doing or not doing or what they should be doing. And most times we need to be focusing on ourselves, so to speak. So I think the fact that it's even something that you are aware of says a lot, because there's a lot of people who live in that truth of, I know what I'm saying and I know what I'm saying and I'm going to criticize and judge you. And I really do think that their opinion carries such weight and value, which so it says a lot that that's something that at least you're even aware of as well, that you do. I've definitely been called out for all of what you guys have said.
We're just human beings. We're just human beings. We're just human beings.
I don't know what that means. The good thing is I don't shame myself.
Good.
I just, like you said, I know I am a human being and I've come a long way. I would say that absolutely for me, control has been something to keep me safe.
Yeah.
And the narrative the trauma brain oftentimes produces, which is more so about if I can do A, B, C, D, E, or if I can get you to get to this conclusion, like you were saying earlier on, Aisha, then everything is fine.
Yeah.
My world is safe. I'm secure.
Yeah.
But it only gives me more anxiety. So it's interesting how you were talking about how controlling behavior sometimes can be seen as a way to help reduce anxiety. But then in most cases, it's a ripple effect where it actually gives you more anxiety because there's more things you now feel you need to control.
Yep.
Right. It causes so
paradox.
much internal chaos. So crazy what the human brain can do in trying to be stable.
Yeah.
But I wanted to shift the conversation a little bit, still on topic, but just to hear your thoughts about, so that people can start learning what some early warning signs are What have you guys noticed or observed are early warning signs and common forms of controlling behavior in different types of relationships? So, your romantic relationships, your friendships, your workplace, your family. Your family. The family.
I think one thing that, like, the first thing that popped up into my mind was language. The words that people say and the way people talk. Like, for
Justin,
example,
repeat yourself so that people can hear you again.
Language and the way people talk to you. For example, when I was a child, I used to have a family member who would always, quote unquote, ask me closed-ended questions. Like, we're going here, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? This is what we're going to do. It was more of like a declarative statement or a command. So it wasn't actually asking me what I wanted. It was actually telling me what was going to happen. This whole control thing can be very insidious. Like, it can really slip under the radar. For example, also like making assumptions. Like, oh, I didn't ask you because I thought you wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Or I knew you wanted pizza.
Yeah.
I'm vegan. No, I'm just kidding.
I think I would frame that as like making decisions without like your mutual input and then basing it off as an assumption. Like, I just assumed, right?
Yep.
I just assumed that you wouldn't want to come. I just assumed that this is not your thing. But you made that decision without getting my input first or my own perspective about whatever the thing is. Those things are so subtle. Sometimes you don't even realize that they're controlling behaviors.
It's withdrawing autonomy. And it's safe to say that in family dynamics, that's a common controlling behavior. Obviously, when you look at things from the adult figure to the child, and this belief system that because you're a kid, it means that you don't have agency and autonomy in your world. But then, of course, what that does is you end up growing up to be an adult who has no agency and autonomy over their decisions.
Oh, God.
Their feelings, their emotions, because these are things that you're supposed to build or at least strengthen in your kids at a very young age.
Right.
And I've obviously seen it as well as things like withdrawing or withholding love.
Yeah. Oh,
from
God.
Conditional. I just call it conditional love, where it's more so on a condition of this. If this A, B, C, D, E happens, then E is supposed to happen to some degree.
That's so true.
Oh my God, that withhold. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I guess like I'm thinking as well, obviously, because you brought up family, and obviously there's other relationship dynamics as well with controlling behaviors. And I think this one obviously applies to every relationship dynamic.
Yeah.
Manipulation, even though all of what I just described now is a form of manipulation, I would say gaslighting as well, which is just basically putting someone in a position where they have to question their own reality. Their sense of reality, basically. You make them doubt their emotions, feelings, experiences, and whatnot. The last thing that I was going to say is also, as crazy as it sounds, I think blame is also a type of controlling behavior as well, where oftentimes whatever experiences that you have somehow always turns into it being other people's fault, the world's fault, your siblings' fault, your friends' fault, your partner's fault. I understand that everyone is accountable to themselves. But if you're someone who already creates a habit of always putting people in a position where they need to be falsely accountable to themselves, it's another form of control that is not as obvious as maybe other ones like gaslighting.
I have to add one more. Guilt tripping is a huge one. And first I was going to say that's big in families, but I feel like that's big in romantic relationships, and it can also be in friendships.
It's big in every relationship.
And I feel like that plays on, I feel like it's a skewed play on this idea of respect and love. Like, it's, if you loved me enough, you wouldn't like make this a big deal. Or if you cared about me enough, like, you would just let this slide. And it kind of pushes that to a place where it's not healthy. But guilt tripping is, I feel it's so common. I'm just thinking about my clients too. Like, every turn.
That's actually very, very true. And what you said about it being in every relationship dynamic, but you see it being like shown in romantic relationship dynamics as well. Because obviously, I think we all know guilt and shame are one of those emotions that is not a type of emotion that we should be sitting in
with, right? They're not
and
productive.
living in and sort of consuming, because it can be very harmful to us.
Yeah.
So imagine being in a romantic relationship dynamic with someone and then looking at the longevity, whether it's 5 years of that same cycle of
Imagine
behavior.
the consequences.
That level of guilt tripping can be very, very harmful. So you make an excellent point there.
You absolutely do. It just makes me think about clients that because of just these traumatic experiences in relationships of people consistently guilt tripping them, gaslighting them, manipulating them, withdrawing emotion because they disagree with something, financial abuse, and them just struggling with their sense of self because they can't even figure out who they are outside those critical voices or even make little decisions for themselves because somebody has always criticized that or made them feel like, oh, the one that pisses me off is the one where like people minimize their partner's ideas or their success. It's so painful to watch. It's like you can't even sit with your partner's success because of whatever you're going through internally to the point that you have to bring them down and they have to question like, wow, is this really a big deal for me? Should I be celebrating it? Oh, yeah, it's just another thing. It's so sad to watch, honestly. Very, very sad.
That is, you guys are telling the truth.
I saw
today.
Dustin's face when you said that.
I mean, I know you guys have talked about this extensively, but that jealousy and envy, that is, we're not saying people are bad. We're just saying about unhealthy habits. But that, I have to say, can be very toxic.
Very.
And very detrimental to the relationship.
Very. And it's another form of control that we haven't even touched on today, but it's very real and people experience it. And a lot of times it starts like with subtle things as well. And then it just becomes this very grand thing where you're like, oh my God, look at what this person, I
agree. And it's just like what we said earlier on already. There's the obvious ones and then there's the ones that are not that obvious because they are sort of presented in a way where it's for the person's benefits.
Yeah.
Which can be very tricky and very difficult for you to even decipher that that's what you're experiencing. So I do want to ask, just going off of that, right? I want to hear from you both. Why is it difficult for someone to recognize that they are being controlled? And how can they actually become more aware of that?
A very, very good question. But I think as like what you just said, I think controlling behavior sometimes can be very confusing because if it's disguised as care, right? Like, or concern, like, oh, you know, they're just trying to help. They care about me. I value their opinion. It's easy for you to rationalize it and think that it's coming from a place of love and respect. So I think people can often minimize it when it's coming from that perspective where they're like, but why would somebody that is telling me I love you and telling me they care about me and doing all these other acts of care with their actions too, like why would they try to control me? Do you get what I mean? So I think it's because it's confusing. Sometimes you can't just tell because they use that manipulative tactic to confuse you. You know, it's, oh, we don't care about your success, but babe, I really want you to push to get this promotion. So it's like, well, what, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes you could feel it's hard to recognize it because it's that gaslighting thing you said. You feel gaslighted to the point that you don't even know what's real and what's not real.
Yeah.
And so you can't really identify what's truly going on. But I think, like we always talk about on the podcast, how you feel plays a huge role, right? So awareness starts with noticing how you feel around the person. Are you anxious? Are you always second guessing yourself around them? Are you always, this is so funny. I have a client that had her boyfriend was so controlling that before she would hang out with him, she has a journal where she would write down all her responses before going there. I know. Isn't that crazy?
That's so
Isn't
unnatural.
that crazy? Isn't that crazy? So she's like, I already know he'll say
that
this.
That sounds like getting ready for a fight.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So you know exactly how you're feeling. Are you feeling defensive? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling like your choices or your identity shrinks around that person? Like you can't really be your authentic self? Or maybe it's even the workplace, right? In that space. These are some of the things that I think would be helpful for people to start becoming aware. Your body will keep score of how you feel. Now, you may try and rationalize it and tell yourself like, oh, maybe this is not real or not real, but how you feel will tell you the truth in that moment.
Yeah.
Two things come to mind for me, just kind of responding to your question, is about why don't people realize they're in controlling situations? Wait, was that the question? Or
yeah, that was it. Yeah.
I think two things. Number one, and this is not shaming, I think a lot of people really struggle to be assertive. And furthermore, to find an assertive voice with their loved ones, with people they really care about. That's a real struggle that I see in my clients. And it kind of goes hand in hand with the second one. This concept comes up. I don't know. I kind of like made this concept up. We're just working so many years. I call it hurt feelings. People will not make moves if they feel like they're going to hurt someone's feelings.
Yep, that is true.
Yeah.
As soon as that comes up, they're like, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or, I don't want to cause like a fuss. Like people sometimes we tell ourselves that it'd just be better to keep this to ourselves and to not disrupt things than to actually kind of identify the problem and try to get through the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a follow-up question for you guys, though, just based off what Dustin said. Do you guys think that comes from past experiences, like your childhood, how you were brought up, and maybe the models of like what healthy conversations looks like when you're growing up? Because I feel like people lack that skill, because if you don't have the skill, then how do you know how to practice it in person, right? What do you guys think about that?
You better preach.
Yep. They can't see us right now.
Wait, I have to record this.
So for the listeners who are trying to figure out what's happening right now. So Dustin came up with a really cool idea before we started recording and said that whenever anyone drops like wisdom golden nuggets, we're going to just lose it behind the scenes with...
Sorry, guys, this is my form of
Okay, but to be
it.
fair, I've been doing that for years.
Dustin's light comes up. My flower thingy comes up. But the point being, we absolutely are in agreement with obviously what Aisha is saying. And you're dropping very, very, very serious and very wise nuggets right now. Oh. I would say yes. There's no but in attachment to that. I would say yes. And if I'm being open and obviously disclosing, I have been in controlling relationships, like romantic relationships. I've been in controlling friendships as well. So not just romantic relationships. I've been in controlling familial dynamics. So I would say that I am someone who obviously has grown up around controlling behaviors. Enough for the messaging for me to be that controlling behaviors is normal.
Wow.
Enough for the messaging for me to believe that controlling behaviors is a form of communication. Controlling behaviors is also a form of you doing what you feel is best for that person. It's for their best interest. And then, of course, it's healthy.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, my healthy brain, even going through some of these experiences, would question it. Would be I don't really know if this is what love is supposed to
that don't sound
like,
right,
or sound like, or look like. But if you're normalized, like you said already, to a lot of these behaviors, you're not going to immediately jump to seeing and recognizing them as harmful behaviors, let alone have the skill sets to be able to actually help yourself in rectifying those behaviors. So absolutely, a lot of these things, unfortunately, are really, really much so rooted in the messaging that our ecosystem, whether it's from family, school, church, religion, and whatnot, it is there. That's the truth. It is. So you hit the nail on the head with that for sure.
I just love what you said about even if you've normalized it, there's a part of your brain that still can sense that something is off. And I think a lot of times we minimize that aspect because, like you're saying, you're just thinking, well, maybe this is their form of care and love for me. They're doing this for a reason. And, you know, when we talk about generational patterns, everybody else is doing it. So why would it be different for me, you know? But I think it's good for us to talk about that normalized part because a lot of people know that this is something that they're experiencing, but they just don't know how to kind of combat it or like break that cycle because your norm sometimes can feel comfortable, and even though it's hurting you, it can feel comfortable, and you're just like, well, you know, I'm just gonna sit with this even if it's causing you more harm than good.
Dustin, what do you think?
I think it's very true as far as like, you know, that's like social learning. Have we learned those skills? Have we learned how to have like difficult conversations? Have we learned how to kind of, you know, ask for what we really need? In my work with my clients, I'm teaching them to do that for the first time. And I'm working with people who are like, you know, 40s, 50s plus sometimes. And, you know, I feel like in our society, it's very much like, you know, don't complain too much. Like, you know, put your head down, be successful. But like, you shouldn't be changing your mind too much. You know, people want you to be consistent. People want you to be like supportive. And if you're not, you're like problematic. Or you're difficult. or you're dramatic. So I think that's another social stereotype that really keeps people from sometimes even just asking for respect or just like a better relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tough.
I've been calling them culturally conditioned beliefs.
Yep.
That's what I've been calling them as of late, because to some degree, as much as there's cultural nuances there, a lot of these beliefs are conditioned beliefs.
Yeah.
And if it's conditioned, then that means you can condition yourself to actually have healthier beliefs. It's not something that you necessarily have to identify with for the rest of your life because you were conditioned for an extended period of time of your life that is what is normal and healthy behavior.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And just staying with that, what you both just shared, what do you think are some practical steps people can take if they start to realize that they're in a controlling situation and they start to realize, like, I don't want to normalize this anymore. I want to break this pattern.
Yeah. That's a hard one. That's a very, very hard one.
Yeah, it's totally possible, but it is a journey. I think the first step, there's two different things you can do. It's like, one is you can take action steps. Like we're going to talk about those, like change the way you talk. But another part is you should reflect on how you feel about yourself and how you honestly feel about how the person is treating you and how your interaction is. And I would keep in mind that relationships should be equal. People should be putting in equal parts. That's like kind of the ideal. Equal energy, equal love, equal care. If it's like 75-25 and you're the 75, maybe just ask yourself, why have I been, allowing this to go on? And sometimes that's a really hard question that people aren't ready to ask, but it's very important.
Yeah. I really just echo a lot of what Dustin is saying. And I want to just add a little bit to that. I had an experience with a client recently where we were going down a list of, I guess you could say, how do you know if your relationship is dysfunctional or controlling or unhealthy and whatnot? So we went down this list and I eventually told my client, I said, okay, so out of all of these things that you've said yes to, and basically these were all obviously unhealthy, dysfunctional characteristic traits, if you had a friend or a sister or a sibling who had, let's say, very similar experiences, would you say that this was a relationship that they should be in or a relationship that they shouldn't be in? And obviously she was like, no. I don't even really like my sister right now, but I would tell my sister not to be in that relationship. So I said, okay, so that says a lot.
Right.
So I absolutely echo a lot of what you were saying, Dustin, because I think that it's very important for us to be able to name what is also happening as well. Unfortunately, being someone who has been in controlling romantic relationships, friendships, and familiar relationships, I think that your self-worth and self-value matters. I'm sure you probably have heard this quote that was running all over social media where the girl said, what you're not changing, you're choosing.
Hey, repeat that.
What you're not changing, you're choosing.
Oh my goodness.
Not you being triggered. Not you being triggered. But no. What you're not changing, you're choosing, in the sense where, unfortunately, a lot of why certain controlling behaviors existed in those relationships with me, and it's not to ease those people from their own responsibility and what they're accountable to themselves for. It's more so, what am I accountable? What does self-accountability look like? And for me, that also looks like me accepting said behaviors is me equally saying that is okay. Now, the question is, if I say that I don't deserve this, why are my actions in line with someone who thinks that they deserve this? So to some degree, clearly there's parts of myself that must think that it is okay and this is acceptable behavior.
Right.
So unfortunately, I think a lot of that internal, going back to what Dustin, you were saying earlier on, that internal reflection is needed. And sometimes we need space to be able to actually really reflect on what is happening, name what is happening, look inwards as well. Why am I thinking this is okay and why am I accepting this? But the truth of the matter is, it wasn't until I started loving myself enough to remove myself from situations that I knew were causing me harm.
Yeah.
That was I now in a position where I could start challenging a lot of these conditioned beliefs.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I don't think a lot of people can be in controlling dynamics and be able to challenge said beliefs in said dynamics. Oftentimes, you have to just love yourself to separate and have that space, because space brings clarity.
It does. It really does.
I think part of that space is also creating a support network. So just making sure you have other people that you have some type of connection with outside of, you know, either the family or the partner or the friend. Because I feel like, did we talk about isolating? But sometimes those controlling...
isolation,
Yeah,
sometimes those controlling behaviors involve isolating you from others.
Yeah.
So that can be a good place to start.
A lot of times, not sometimes. But I love what you both have said, and you guys have kind of summarized it well. I definitely agree with seeking support from trusted people or professionals. And what Paula was saying about self-work, a lot of times you could start on your own, but if you can, I would suggest seeking a professional, because sometimes we have blind spots, and a lot of times those blind spots are hard for us to see.
Wow.
And that's the point of a professional, right? They help you identify these blind spots and help you, our light is popping off, and then help you kind of work through that, right? Why did I normalize this? And all of those things that Paula said. Just to add quickly before we wrap up, it's so important that with all of this awareness, with all of this internal work, that you should be please patient with yourself and have some compassion. We're talking about all of this, but it is hard. It is so hard. It's so hard. All of that work that you're going to be doing will be hard. And there's going to be times where you find yourself going back to the normalized behavior that wasn't helpful for you. But that's also part of the process. Being patient with yourself, acknowledging when you do have a lapse and recognizing it as that's you being a human being, rather than criticizing yourself and going to the automatic, what's the point of doing all of this? I don't want to do this anymore. And the last thing I'll say is being uncomfortable is not the worst thing in the world. Going through change is uncomfortable, but it's not the worst thing in the world. Until it becomes your new norm, you are going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay.
Right. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think that that is so true. I know we've been talking a lot about this from almost like a distant perspective, not necessarily from a subjective, interpersonal, even though we've shared here and there, especially because we're all professionals. And I think sometimes when people might listen to all professionals talking and sharing, there's a level of lack of relatability that's there. And I think one of the reasons why, personally for me, I'm very open about my life experiences and I don't have shame about it, is because if people look at who I am today, they would not believe the things that I was accepting in my life as okay. And I think one, that says a lot about just what life growth, if you're just being consistent in really nurturing your well-being, your mental health, seeking support, like you said, Dustin, seeking help, like you said, Aisha, and also just being able to like really ask yourself some of those tough questions. So it's super important, because I know that we all have experienced some level. We've either been the people with controlling behaviors and not seen it with those blind spots, or being the people who've been in dynamics where people had said controlling behaviors. So there is some level of normality to it, in the sense where we all share these experiences. So it's not an isolating experience. For whoever is obviously listening, it's not a you problem or a you thing. It's really just part of your trajectory, and one of the best things that you can do for yourself. And I would also say that this is something that I really tried to do even when being in set dynamics. Was I always envisioned what a healthier version of myself would look like, what a healthier version of my relationships would look like, what a healthier version of my current reality would look like. And I would look at it, and then I would look at the reality, and it was not in alignment. And I think sometimes we fear doing things like that because we don't trust. We think this is all we deserve. This is all it's going to ever be. If I am wishful thinking that this healthier version of myself would exist, but I don't know if I can't trust that it would actually exist. We sort of stay in our current reality. I would really, really implore you to not stop doing that, because the more you're thinking in that direction, the more your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior soon become in alignment with that too as well.
Yeah.
But like you said, Aisha, that giving yourself grace, it is so important because you're a human being.
Yeah.
Your experiences may have informed your current reality, but it does not necessarily need to define what your future looks like.
Preach. Snaps.
I just want to reiterate that this is not about if you have controlling behaviors or if you have someone who's important to you in your life who has controlling behaviors. It's not about saying that they are a bad person or you're a bad person. It's not about demonizing them. It's about looking at the relationship and like, where can we have more balance? Where can I like start setting maybe just one or two little boundaries so I'm feeling a little bit more comfortable? What are some little things that I can do? Like, you know, maybe I should be taking a little bit more accountability for my emotions instead of just like kind of letting them always guilt trip me, just like one little step at a time. It's all about balance because, as we've said a lot, relationships are so complicated and they are so tricky and they're also so beautiful, but it takes a lot to get them going. And I would just want to say thanks again for having me. If anyone wants to find me, you can look up psychologytoday.com, Dustin Barnes, Barnes, or send me an email at dbtherapy at... Okay, one more time. Dustin, you can send me an email at dustin@dbtherapyllc.com.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much.
You guys are awesome.
This was a conversation that I truly believe is going to help whoever it is that's listening.
I agree.
On whatever journey that they are on.
Yes.
We appreciate you, Dustin. To know Dustin is to love Dustin.
Aww.
And I was about to be like, well, and y'all cannot relate because he's my friend.
Wow, Paula. Dang.
Being controlling just right there and there.
Wow. Sorry to some of us.
No, but we honestly want to thank you. This was a really great conversation and there's so much that you've shared, Dustin, but there's so much that you've also shared as well, Aisha, that I can tell as I was listening. I'm going to have to take and process on my own time as well. One of the things that we often like to do, obviously, is how can our listeners find us and how can our listeners find you? Now, Dustin has already shared this, but in our session notes, which is basically the episode 7 session notes, we're going to also attach Dustin's Psychology Today link and then his email for you to be able to reach out to him and book a session with him if you are interested. So, Aisha, how can our listeners find you specifically?
You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at ab.popoola, spelled Popoola. And then you can find me on LinkedIn at Aisha Popoola. What about you?
You can find me on Instagram, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, paula.b.martins. And you can find my private practice, The Human Therapist LLC, on Instagram at The Human Therapist LLC.
Love it. What about our podcast? How can they even listen to this episode and then connect with us after?
Okay, so you can find us on Instagram, on Twitter/X at DWHYA Podcast. You can find us on TikTok at DWHYA Podcast 1. And you can email us at info@dwhyapodcast.com.
Do we have your attention?
Love it.
It was an honor and a pleasure, ladies.
It was so nice to have this conversation with you, Dustin, and we hope to have you back soon.
Yes.
Let me check my schedule.
Yes.
He's available. Come on, you guys. Let's go. Like,
booked and busy. He said, I'm booked and busy. Okay, love it.
All right. And until then, stay blessed.
Bye.
Bye.